Hello, it's John Heaton, and today I'm going to review this album from Neil Young. Tonight's the Night, released June the 20th, 1975, but recorded quite a bit earlier. By the way, I hope it doesn't rain. It's been threatening to. The long summer evenings are getting shorter, but we're still managing to film outside. It's still quite pleasant here. This was the third album in what's known as the Ditch Trilogy, which started off with Time Fades Away, continued with On the Beach, and then this was the final instalment. But interestingly enough, this album was recorded before On the Beach and came out in the wrong order. Was On the Beach came out in 74. I did pick up On the Beach on vinyl recently, which I was pleased to do. I'll just show you the packaging of this. It's not my favourite cover, but apparently around the time it was recorded, recorded August to September 73. When he was touring around that time, he would insist on playing this album from start to finish and make no concessions to what the fans wanted in terms of playing the hits from Harvest or After the Gold Rush. And then when he finished playing the album, he would just start all over again and do the whole thing again. So that probably pissed off some of the crowd, but some of the crowd were delighted to hear a new album. I always think it's brave when an artist is performing a new album almost before recording it in the studio from start to finish. There's not too many examples of people doing that in history, and I think it's quite brave, rather than just going out to play your hits. It's the gatefold, and then on the back we've got the band for this album, which familiar names play on here: Ben Keith, Nils Lofgren, Danny Whitten on guitar, who passed away, Jack Nish, Billy Talbot, Tim Drummond on bass on one track, Lookout Joe, and Kenny Buttrey also plays on Lookout Joe, and Ralph Molina on drums for most of the rest. So there's quite a few interesting inserts. The label is not very interesting. It's just a black and white label, but the inserts here are quite interesting because you've got Neil at the piano, which I think he seems to be at the keyboards for this tour rather than playing guitar, or he probably did both. But then on the back you've got Ben Keith, Ralph Molina, Billy Talbot, Nils Lofgren, and then a space down here for Danny Whitten. So he had passed away, and Bruce Berry, Neil's road manager, had also passed away, and so those two deaths hit him pretty hard. And the album is all about that. Well, certainly the title track is all about that. This is another interesting insert. It's got a kind of letter from someone called Waterface, where, amongst other things, he says, "I'm sorry, you don't know these people. This means nothing to you." So I think it might be a reference to, the fact that the people he's talking about on this album, your average fan doesn't know who they are, so it doesn't mean anything to the person listening to it. But it's really harrowing stuff, this album, very personal. And if I'm talking about the most personal albums, on the most harrowing albums I can think of, in my collection anyway, then this album, Blood on the Tracks from Bob Dylan, and John Lennon Plastic-Ono Band would probably be the top three. It's also interesting for a picture of Roy Orbison, I think, from a bootleg for some reason, and then some credits, and then this album review from a Dutch magazine in Dutch, and Neil included it because he says when you're so strung out like he was at the time, everything is Dutch to him. And actually, some Dutch people visited his house and translated it for him. So then he realised that actually there is someone else who understands what he's up to. And so he included it in as a insert in the album. It would be nice to have an English translation of it to see how good the original album is. I mean, the review was, but anyway. So quite nice packaging, a little bit depressing I suppose, it's all black and white. But yeah, so that's the background. Got to number 25 in the US, not a huge seller. And the review, one of the reviews, I think it was Dave Marsh, said the record chronicles the post-hippie, post-Vietnam demise of counterculture idealism and a generation-long slow trickle down the drain through drugs, violence and twisted sexuality. This is Young's only conceptually cohesive record, and it's a great one. Well, that review passage is a little bit pretentious for my liking, and I don't think it's the only cohesive album that he put out. I think there's other albums which flow very well from start to finish. Thinking of Comes a Time in particular, that one comes to mind as a complete cohesive album. But anyway, this Ultimate Record Guide for Neil Young, of which probably this is the best value in the series because he's done so many albums. So this is a lot fatter of a volume than the one for Bob Marley, for example. And as usual, very in-depth, illuminating reviews of all the albums. Tonight's the night, no exception here. And a pretty glowing review from John Dale. Gives 4 or 5 stars to every track on the album. But there was one contemporary review at the time which was negative, or at least the one here that I've got for you says, this selection of songs does nothing whatsoever to enhance Young's credibility. We all know he can do better, and even has better songs around, so why did he release it? Is he really just laughing at us for taking him so seriously? Steve Clark in The NME, 14th of June 75. That's a bit of a shame. I don't know why people at the time, or why this particular reviewer found it substandard Neil Young, because I think over the years this album is probably lauded as one of Neil Young's very best albums, and deservedly so. Not just because of its harrowing nature, just because of the quality of the songwriting and the quality of the lyrics, apart from anything else. So I'll just put this away in case it rains. So we'll go through the track. So it opens with Tonight's the Night, which is obviously about Danny Whitten and Bruce Berry, and it mentions Bruce Berry by name, and it's quite a tortured song, not brilliant melodically by any means, and quite a difficult listen really, and it's repeated at the end of the album as well, just to rub it in. It's pretty miserable stuff, and I can understand why it tops and tails the album, but it's there are better tracks songwriting wise elsewhere on the album, should we put it like that. Speaking Out is a great ballad with Neil Young on the piano. You know, he does guitar ballads well as well, but he really does piano ballads well, and this is a standout. Just him and the piano for the most part, with some great guitar solos from Niels Lofgren, I think it is. Yeah, because he mentions him by name in the song. And I think, you know, this song actually also reminded me that there's a song later where he admits to borrowing from the Rolling Stones, but this song reminds me of another Stones song which they didn't write, called You've Got to Move from Sticky Fingers. A little bit reminiscent of that, but I prefer this. The wind's picking up. Does that mean it's going to rain? Can we get through this video in time? So after that, Speaking Out, an outstanding track. Word on a String is an upbeat rocking number, great band sound, and just a great, yeah, it's a great song. Play this one loud. Borrowed Tune is pretty obviously borrowed from Lady Jane, Rolling Stones song from '65, I think it was. And hilariously, in the middle of the song, he actually says, I'm singing this borrowed tune I took from the Rolling Stones, all alone in this empty room, too wasted to write my own. And I think Mick Jagger and Keith must have taken it in the spirit in which it was recorded, because I don't think there was any legal action or anything, and it was almost a tribute, if anything, to Mick and Keith that he would do that. And it's a really affecting, quite a sad song. Neil, not in the best place emotionally at the time of this album, and it's quite raw and very effective and very harrowing, and I'm not going to say enjoyable, because that's probably a wrong word for this type of song, but it's very, very moving, should we say. Then we've got a track recorded with Crazy Horse back in 1970 live, called Come On Baby Let's Go Downtown, with Danny Whitten on lead vocal, who was the guitarist who had also passed away, along with Bruce Berry, the road manager. So that is handled very, very well. Again, another one to play loud. Danny Whitten's on lead vocal. Neil is singing a great harmony, and it's not often he sings a high harmony on a song, and he does that to brilliant effect on this song. I love it to bits. And then side one ends with Mellow My Mind, which is another tortured ballad with some quite tortured lyrics. A good ending to side one. By the way, the original track listing of this album had different track listing and slightly different tracks. There was a couple of tracks from On the Beach. I think Walk On By was on there. And this review here in Uncut said, indeed, the acetate is incredibly bleak listening. Shuffling tracks so Mellow My Mind and Tired Eyes are bumped to near the album's beginning. The latter loses its strange twilight sense of resigned resolution and feels more like a troubled voice shot deep into the void. And the other song from On the Beach, which was on the original acetate, was For the Turnstiles. So Neil actually said he was going to put that out one day, the original album. I did see a bootleg vinyl copy of it in Italy last year, but I don't think it's been officially released. And as I say, probably a bit too bleak in terms of the track order and the way it's sequenced. So this is the album we all know and love anyway. So let's come back to it, and we get a good opener, a hilarious opener to side two, which kind of lightens the mood a bit because it's got so much humour in it. Roll Another Number for the road. Although, Neil sounds quite resigned when he's singing. It's not the happiest song in the world, but it is quite amusing as a kind of sing-along number, and quite an uplifting melody as well. I like it a lot. Then Albuquerque is a glorious ballad, and with great lines like I'll stop when I can, get some fried eggs and country ham. And I was thinking this song could have fitted well into the series Breaking Bad, because Breaking Bad was filmed in Albuquerque, and there's that scene when Walter White is celebrating his 52nd birthday in this anonymous cafe and shaping the bacon and eggs into a 5 and a 2. And I was thinking they could easily be playing this Albuquerque track in the background during that scene. It would have been great. Anyway, that was a missed opportunity. So that's a great song. Good harmonies, by the way, harmony vocals on a lot of this material. New Mama, again, nice harmonies. George Whitzel on vocals for New Mama, along with Neil. And a lovely song, not the strongest material on the album, but very nice. And then Look Out Joe is an upbeat number, a bit similar to Word on a String, but with different musicians, as I said, Kenny Buttrey and Tim Drummond, the rhythm section for Look Out Joe. But it's a standard Neil Young rocker, and it works very effectively. And then the album draws to a close with a song about a cocaine deal which went wrong, Tired Eyes. Very resigned singing from Neil on this. He sounds depressed as hell, but it's beautiful singing, and it's beautifully done melodically and well played at a funereal pace, but and his voice sounds strained in the higher registers, but that only adds to the poignancy of the lyrics. And it's a great song, and maybe it could have been a good closer for the album, but as I said, the album closes with a reprise of Tonight's the Night. The overall album lasts for 44 minutes 52 seconds, so quite a longish album for the time. But in my top 5 Neil Young's albums of all time, in my opinion, it's maybe not the most. If I want a happy Neil Young record, I'll pick Comes a Time. But if I want to kind of, if you ever feel like wallowing in self-pity, then this or Blood on the Tracks are pretty good albums to go to. But not just for that reason that I go to this album. It's a very strong album, songwriting wise, and all the people who dished it at the time were wrong. And time has treated it well, and it stood the test of time. Here we are all these years later, 33 years later, 25 plus 18, is that right? 33, 35, 40, gee, I'm gonna have to edit this video, my maths is terrible. 1975, long time ago. So good album. Thanks for watching, see you next time.